welcome to In the Zone. Alongside Joshua Gearhart and Lucas Miller, I'm your host, Zach Humphreys. As college football continues to roll and the NFL season gives us more and more to ponder, we've got a lot to talk about. In the Zone starts now.
Good point.
Kick things off today starting with some college football. The Georgia Bulldogs took on a South Carolina team led by a man that we've all almost forgotten about, Spencer Rattler. The surprising part is South Carolina held their own. That is until Georgia became the Georgia Bulldogs we know. This game was Georgia's first real test, but it's still a bit of a surprise to see such a low score with a small gap between the two teams. In your opinion, Lucas, is Georgia the true number one team in the country?
I think as of right now, you can't really drop them down. I mean, behind them is Michigan, Texas, Florida State, USC. That's rounding out the top five. But until one of those other teams behind them really proves themselves, I don't think you can drop Georgia. I don't think they are the same team they were last year. I don't think, they are the true best. But I think there's no reason to drop them from one as of yet. I mean, they held their own against a tough SEC opponent, and Michigan, Texas, Florida State, they all struggled this week, so you can't really jump anyone above them right now. I think they're fine where they're at.
I completely agree with you, Lucas. I think, kind of building on what you said, this is definitely not the same Georgia team we saw last year, right? I mean, they lost all those defensive starters to the Philadelphia Eagles now. I guess basically are the Georgia Bulldogs of the NFL. But to back what you said, I think it's firm for them to stay where they're at until they find themselves against real SEC competition. Let's see what they do against the Bamas, the Tennessees. And do they play Texas at all?
No. They don't play. I don't think they play Bama regular season.
All right, well, let's see what they can do against the true SEC teams before we can make that true judgment of, hey, is Georgia still the number one? I couldn't make the argument, honestly, though. There are two teams in my mind that could potentially eclipse them for the number one spot as of right now. And those two teams in my mind are either Florida State or Texas. I think Texas, ladies and gentlemen, you're hearing it here first. Texas is back. Texas is back. Texas is back. Quinn Ewers, ladies and gentlemen, Quinn Ewers is the real deal. He is a dog. All right, we saw that against Bama. He dismantled that entire defense, right? So then also, Florida State, Jordan Travis, both Heisman candidates right there. And Florida State's got one heck of a receiving corps, fellas. One heck of a receiving corps. And that transfer from Michigan, I'm blanking on his name right. It was Deion McCain. Deion McCain,
I think so.
That man is lethal, absolutely lethal. He dismantled the entire LSU secondary.
I think you're thinking of Keon Coleman.
Keon Coleman, that's mine. Yeah. Keon Coleman. But holy cow, fellas, those two teams are dangerous this year.
Do y'all feel, so one of the big things over the offseason was when the schedule was released, right? So Lucas, the big thing about Georgia was Georgia has somewhat of a weak schedule compared to other SEC opponents. Do you see this as like an issue when it comes later down the road when the rankings start to get tight, or
not necessarily? Because Georgia, they obviously, like being in the SEC, they play a lot of quote unquote cupcake games like at the beginning of the year. But my big question mark for Georgia right now is the quarterback, because I want to see, he hasn't had a real test yet. South Carolina, it is an SEC team, but I want to see what happens when they play Auburn. I want to see what happens when they play Florida, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, because those four games right there, especially Tennessee and Florida, are really going to show what Carson Beck is made of and what the 2023 Georgia Bulldogs are made of. Because it's not the same team as it was last year, like we have mentioned, but I want to see what happens when that quarterback and some of those younger guys on offense who maybe aren't as experienced go up against a team like Tennessee, Florida, Ole Miss.
I think he's got a great point. Ole Miss is looking really hot right now. Jackson Dart is like the leading completion. He's got the leading completions right now in the SEC. So they look really hot, and they've continued to keep on rolling. So that being said, Ole Miss will be a tough game, and so will Florida. Right. Florida really, really looked good the other night against, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And that was a good Tennessee team. And, I'll never forget, the Tennessee quarterback, I'm blanking on his name right now, was saying to everybody, oh, I never lose in Florida, I never lose in Florida. And then Graham Mertz comes out there and, drops 20-some points on him. So Florida is kind of on the uptick right now as well.
Well, speaking of teams that are kind of on the uptick, Penn State has looked really sharp over this season, and they just had a Big Ten matchup against Illinois, which, unlike their 2021 game, did not end after 9 overtimes. What most Penn State fans hoped would be a blowout ended up being a slow-moving, uneventful game, that is, until, like the Georgia game, Penn State became the Nittany Lions we know, and they ended up finishing the game with a 30-13 win over Illinois. Is there a reason to be concerned after this game, Josh, or do you think Penn State was just kind of trying to get some traction that game?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think there's a reason to hit the panic button yet. I mean, Illinois is a great team. I mean, Brett Bielema is a great coach. There's no doubt about that. So with that being said, first of all, I will be saying I'm very thankful that it was not a 9 overtime loss as compared to last year. It's very relaxing. But to your extent, yeah, the offense had a lot of struggles. Drew Allar was less than 50% on the day when completing passes. But the shining light, though, this was the game that I was waiting for our defense. You know, our defense is, notoriously known for the takeaways, the interceptions, the fumbles, the sacks, all that stuff. And I was missing it the past couple games. But Illinois, it was on full display. We're talking 4 interceptions on 1 QB. That's like, you just want to put a towel over your head, go on the sidelines, and never show your face again kind of day. So, like, Daquan Hardy, Johnny Dixon, Abdul Carter, Cam Miller, all these guys getting in on the action today and, creating and being disruptive, that was huge. And that was a much-needed game, I think, for the defense because, let's be honest, guys, this is the best Penn State offense we've seen in years. Do we really think the offense needed a boost of confidence? I think the defense needed this game, and it was a great game for our defense.
What about you? Any concerns with the Nittany Lions?
Yeah, I obviously have concerns because I'm a big Penn State fan, but not from that game. Just, going for it. I want to see how they do against Michigan. I want to see how they do against Ohio State, clearly. But going against Illinois, like, a lot of people will think that's not, like, a really tough opponent, but that is kind of a tough place to play. And like you said, the defense really stepped up this week.
Absolutely.
I mean, they took advantage of playing against a weaker quarterback like Altmaier. They took advantage of playing against a team like Illinois. So 5 takeaways, 4 interceptions, 1 fumble. That's great. That's everything we needed to see for them to, their next couple games are Northwestern, UMass, and then, Iowa, of course, in the whiteout. But then they go to Ohio State. So,
I know we got to jump real quick to the next topic here, but the whiteout, that's coming up this weekend. Iowa, Penn State. I know all of us here are Penn State fans. That 2021 game against Iowa, so sour, so bitter, and they mocked our players getting injured on the sidelines, right? How do you think that plays in the mind of these players coming into this week as, they're going to want revenge?
Yeah,
thoughts on that, guys?
It plays a big role because, I mean, like you said, the whiteout game, it's one of the best environments
It's the best
in college
spectacle in
football.
all of college sports.
They have that game as a cushion. They have the next 2 after that, so they can really just develop everything they need to right now before they head into, bigger Big Ten play.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this whiteout game is going to be exciting. I mean, I would bet the Penn State spread, but, we don't condone betting here on the zone.
We are.
With what is possibly the most fun headline in college football right now is the brand new Deion Sanders-led Colorado football team, who now finds themselves at 3-0 on the season. The Buffaloes find themselves ranked in the top 25 for just the 4th time since 2005. This team, however, just feels different. Is it an overreaction to say that this team could be legit and go all the way?
Is it an overreaction? Yeah, it is. I mean, I have not bought into the hype of Colorado yet, and I don't think I'm going to, because I feel like the Pac-12 right now in its last year is very deep. I think Oregon and USC are 2 of the best teams besides Washington. I'd probably say Washington, USC, and then Oregon. So I think Colorado, they have to play all 3 of those teams in the regular season. I think all 3 of those games are pretty much locks as losses for Colorado.
I got to stop you right there, Lucas. I'm like shaking my head over here. Oh my goodness. All right, where do I start? Primetime, first of all, is coming to a school that was, barely even bowl bound last season, right? He's completely changed the culture and given life to Colorado on the football field, which before, they were barely selling out tickets. Right. And now you can't find a single seat. So that being said, Deion has changed the entire culture overnight. And that's all credit to him, the way he coaches. But that being said, I completely and totally disagree with you. I think Colorado should be among the teams that are talked about in the Pac-12 because here's my take, all right? You hear it here first. USC is a below-average team. They are a below-average team with an above-average quarterback, all right? Outside of Caleb Williams and a couple good receivers, who do they have that is dynamic as like Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter? Dude, Travis Hunter is a showstopper.
Travis Hunter is also out for the USC game.
Is he out for the USC game?
Yeah, he's out for Oregon and USC.
But they are also still deep with enough of Shiloh Sanders. They got great receivers, and they got depth in the running back position as well. And look at their defense. Colorado's defense is a lot better than what USC's defense is.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Look, USC, historically speaking, every time they play an opponent, it's a track meet, right? They'll go down and score. The other team goes down and scores, and they go down and score 2 more. So, they just keep putting points on people and winning that way, which works. But, teams like Colorado and Oregon, that ain't going to work against them because they're going to keep scoring on you and eventually stop your offense. So, that being said, I am buying into the hype. I am buying into the primetime effect. I am buying into Colorado. Now, do I think they'll win this week? It's going to be tough. They're coming in as 21-point underdogs, which is the largest underdog, point that Dion has seen his entire career. So this will be very interesting to see how he prepares the guys for this game, especially without Travis Hunter. So how would you guys prepare a team without your star player?
You just got to hope and pray that your offense can come ready to play, I guess. I mean, especially with Travis Hunter, your best player.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think it helps, as your point. Oregon has looked really sharp this entire
they
year.
have. I mean, Bo Nix is among the Heisman contenders for sure.
So, I mean, I would say the one thing I want to say about the Pac-12 is I think Washington is they're running with it this year.
I think Washington's a playoff team.
They are, 100%. I mean, Penix is putting up probably the most numbers of any quarterback in college football right now.
Penix is putting the college football world on notice right now, and what he's doing right now is really impressive.
It is.
Really impressive.
Who would have thought the Pac-12 would be this exciting to talk about? Only 3 weeks.
Gotta go out the bang, right, Zach?
Yeah.
So with that being said, we're
season.
actually going to turn our attention off to the NFL as it got off to a bit of a slow start, but as week 3 approaches, we got quite a bit to discuss. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back. When it comes to the NFL, we usually have a decent grasp of who the playoff locks seem to be. But this year, however, things have started off a bit unpredictably. We'll talk about some of the crazy developments coming up. But first, let's discuss some teams that have exceeded already positive expectations. 2 teams fighting hard just 2 weeks in. The Cowboys and the Niners, as much as I hate to say that, have established themselves as the teams to beat among their fellow NFC teams. Josh, this poses an important question that many people can usually agree to. Do the Cowboys seem legit this year?
To all the Eagles fans out there, you might want to close your ears. I hate to say this, but yeah, man. Those Cowboys, how about them Cowboys? They look scary.
Yeah, I'm not going to be saying that, but
they look real scary. And it's the whole team, right? I mean, it's the offense is humming. The defense, though, holy cow. Let's talk about their performance against the New York Giants, fellas. Granted, it's the New York Giants, but to shut them out 40-0 and to have multiple turnovers in that game, the defense is a machine right now. And one of those players, ex-Penn State alum, Micah Parsons, is making a name for himself for the Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, look, it is very premature to talk about the Cowboys having success, right? Because it always seems like the Cowboys' way to choke towards the middle of the season or especially in the playoffs. But that division is going to be tough. I mean, with the exception of the New York Giants, I mean, that division is going to be a battle. You got the Eagles, which are also undefeated right now. You got the Cowboys, who are also undefeated, and the Niners, who are also undefeated. Every single one of those teams, what's the one thing they have in common, guys?
It's a great question.
A great defense.
Great defense.
You got it.
A great defense. It goes back to the saying, right? Offense wins games, but defense wins championships. All 3 of those teams right now, in my eyes, have the potential to walk home the Lombardi Trophy after this year.
What's your take on these Cowboys this season?
They look pretty good through 2 games where they play against the 2 New York teams who are both pretty terrible. So, I mean, like, their defense does look really good. But, I mean, they played Daniel Jones and the Giants, who's one of the subpar teams. And then they played Zach Wilson. So, I mean, it's
Keep in mind, though, Zach
like,
Wilson does have Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall, and he's got some other weapons as well.
Garrett Wilson also, like, torched the Cowboys on the one play for, like, I don't know how many yards that was, 40-some, 50-some yard touchdown.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, their defense looks really good. They look like a playoff caliber defense. I don't know about the offense,
Right.
though. I really don't, because anything I've seen over the past couple years of watching the Dallas Cowboys is that you can't really trust Dak Prescott.
I agree with that.
So, yeah, well, their defense, it probably does look great, which it probably will continue looking great throughout the course
As long
of the
as
next
they
couple
stay
weeks,
healthy. They
but,
got to stay healthy.
But I don't know how the offense is going to look mainly because of Dak Prescott.
Here's the thing, right? If the Cowboys lose CeeDee Lamb, I mean, you could throw their chances out the window.
Yeah, definitely. That's the concern with the offense is
Right.
who else do they have for Dak to go to besides CeeDee Lamb?
Right. They don't because they lost Dalton Schultz. So they basically don't have enough depth in the tight end room anymore. So basically, you got to bank on CeeDee Lamb staying healthy all year long, which is a lot to ask.
Yeah, so I mean, playoff contender maybe, but probably first round exit again. I'm just gonna throw that in there.
No, I totally agree. So we're just going to move on from these Cowboys here, and we're going to move on to, believe it or not, a less positive note. Unless you're a Ravens fan, Joe Burrow has continued to show signs of weakness and poor health. His Week 1 outing against Cleveland was subpar, as we mentioned, and this week against the Ravens, he still looked very uncomfortable. While they started 0-2 last year as well and still made it to the conference championship, their slow start may be extra concerning this year considering Burrow isn't fully healthy. Now, Josh, are there any concerns with this Bengals team only through 2 weeks?
Well, Zach, they did start the season 0-2 last year, right? And they went to the conference championship. So is there concern? Yes and no. But also their 0-2 season start last year looked a lot different than this. Mm-hmm. I am this close to dropping Joe Shiesty from my fantasy team. I've about had it. I drafted him the third round, being like, man, I got Joe Burrow. We're set for the year. Now I'm like, oh my God, I got Joe Burrow. I need another quarterback. So like, he visibly does look hurt, right? He looks not like the Joe Burrow we saw these past couple years. So the question brings, like, he's got all these weapons out there, but he can't get the ball to him. You got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, you got all these guys out here in the flat that can make these plays. Just get the ball to him. And we've been seeing that time after time again, week after week. I mean, Lucas, your thoughts? I mean, should the panic alarm be going off for Cincinnati yet?
Not yet, but maybe by Monday night, yes. Because, I mean, it's only week 3 that we'll be coming up on him on Monday night. But it's a long season ahead, but that is a game that could, make or break Cincinnati's year in a way. They're playing LA. It's a very tough team. Stafford is looking even better right now somehow, and their defense is very tough. So, I mean, if Joe Burrow is struggling that much already against the Ravens and Cleveland, how will he do against the Rams, like on a primetime Monday night game, if he can't get the ball out to these weapons like you said? Because, going against a tough team like LA, you need Chase to step up and you need T. Higgins to step up, but they can only do that with the ball in their hands. So, even if Burrow's fully healthy by Monday night, how is he going to look? It's a very important Week 3 matchup already in the season.
Absolutely.
That has a lot of playoff implications on the line.
And I will tell you this. I feel like if they go down 0-3 on the year, then that's when you hit the panic button. You're right. Because if they go down 0-3, it's only going to get tougher for them. Right? I mean, the easiest games are kind of, out of their schedule, right? So if they don't pick it up on Monday night, I think that's when you might start to ask the question, how long does Joe Burrow keep starting?
Really? I mean, he did just sign a big extension.
He did.
So I would say you wouldn't stick him on the bench just yet.
No, but here's the thing. If he keeps being the source of the problem, how long do you keep going back to that problem?
A lot of that is because of his health, though. So it's really going to be how is the injury maintained over the next couple weeks.
Exactly.
Well, prayers up to Joe Burrow, and hopefully, maybe his ankle or leg will get better. But speaking of prayers up, unfortunately, the Monday night curses seem to carry on to this past week, where the Cleveland Browns traveled to Pittsburgh in hopes of getting off to a strong 2-0 start and silencing the Deshaun Watson doubters. This, however, did not happen whatsoever. Deshaun looked like a $46 salary quarterback, now to $46 million. The real headline, however, comes in the running back category after Nick Chubb's brutal knee injury that will have him out the rest of the season and maybe more. Josh, what do the Browns do now? I mean, they just signed Kareem Hunt, but that's not even close to a replacement to Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I was going to say they just signed a Kareem Hunt, but like you're right, Zach, that's not really replacing a star running back like the likes of Nick Chubb. Honestly, that is a great question. What do they do now? And honestly, here's my answer, right? You mix in the run and the pass, right? You can rely on a Kareem Hunt as maybe a second or first down back. But when you get to third down, you don't want to be necessarily in obvious passing situations. You want to be in situations that are like a 3rd and 3 or a 3rd and 4. So that way you have minimal yards to go. So that way you can open up the playbook a little bit more. Either, run crossing slants, stunt the linebackers in the middle, or, open it up, have a run or a QB draw or something. Deshaun Watson's a talented quarterback. So if you get him in those situations that he can work with and open up his playbook a little bit more, I think the Browns can still be successful. But the question is, though, here, they got to manage their offense better. The offense is in shambles against the Steelers. Now, granted, both teams have very talented defenses. Cleveland Browns, obviously their strength is their defense. And Pittsburgh, under Matt Canada, there is no such thing as an offense. But the defense is what kept us alive in that game, right? Without T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, and everybody else on the opposite side of the ball, that's the reason they won that game. The Steelers' offense did nothing. Kenny Pickett, all he did was step back, throw a slant to George Pickens, let George Pickens do the rest. All right? The offense is awful. All right, I'm a Steelers fan. Everybody knows Matt Canada is the issue. All right? But if the Browns can maintain an offensive firepower, they got Amari Cooper still, all right? And if they can keep working with the other receivers as well, get them involved, they got a chance, right? And Kareem Hunt is no slouch for running back. He had years of success in Kansas City, and he was with the Browns already a couple years ago. He knows the system. He knows how it works. Open up the playbook and make some more plays.
Do you think the Browns could have a strong comeback after
I think they could. I don't really think losing only one player is like going to derail your season, but Nick Chubb is like 5 players in one. So I mean, I think like Josh said, the receiving core is going to have to step up because the backup running backs the other night, they showed sparks, but they're not going to, they're too young to kind of carry that offense. So you're going to get what you're going to get out of Kareem Hunt, and he's going to do a lot of good things for this offense like he's shown before in the NFL. But this is not anything that's going to be like a home run hit. They're going to carry your season. So at wide receiver, they really have to develop a lot of players to step up here. You have Amari Cooper. They have Donovan Peoples-Jones. Who else can step up besides those two? Right. And it's really going to be how can Deshaun Watson play because he did not look great the other night by any means. Right,
and like keep in mind too, he also has David Njoku as well, right? So he's got a valuable tight end as well. So you're right. It's going to come down to Deshaun Watson. How can Deshaun Watson manage that offense, and how can he kind of figure out, how to open up the playbook and how to make smart plays? Because, like I said, it's going to be important when you have a struggling offense like that to get yourself in situations that are going to only set you up for success.
And I do believe Deshaun Watson is one of those quarterbacks that
he was great at Clemson.
He was dominant in Houston.
He was great in Houston.
I feel like he's one of those quarterbacks that we can trust to turn this offense around.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, that'll actually do it on this episode of In the Zone. For Joshua Gearhart and Lucas Miller and the entire In the Zone crew, I'm Zach Humphreys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you right here next week on In the Zone.